Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Adventures in Historyland YouTube channel. Today, we have as our guest from Austin, Texas in the United States, Damon Stith. Damon is the president of the HAMA Association, which is the Historical African Martial Arts Association. And also he's a chief instructor and founder of the Guild of the, what was it again? Silent or Savage? Guild of the Silent Sword, starting off well as usual.
No problems at all. We have so many different names that are like connected with the group. It's almost is no problem at all.
Okay. Well, yeah, he's the chief instructor and founder of that. And we've been in contact, like so many guests on this channel. We've been in contact for a few years now, I think. We've never actually talked, but so it's great to talk to you today.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to learn more about historical African martial arts.
Okay, I'm honored to be here. And again, it's funny. It's like we've always had this technology to kind of connect, but never really feeling, I guess, a need for it as a, but we're in this point in our lives now where it's like, yeah, we're having to look at these technologies and reach out. It's like, why haven't I never, give you a ring just to have a video chat with you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start off by asking you a little about yourself to share with this wide audience that's obviously out there for this channel. If you would like to share something about you and how you got interested in martial arts.
Okay, so one, I'm an old man, so I'm an old man. So when I usually tell the story of how my father gifted me with my first sword when I was 6 years old, and I usually have a lot of fun just kind of like making it into this mystical, moment, drawing the sword from the stone. My father gives me this sword, and it's like I'm, transfixed with this object. And the truth is that my awakened, my inner warrior was awakened when I was young. My father gave me a gift of a plastic sword. It was a cheap plastic sword with a jeweled hilt and all that kind of stuff. And I cherished that. That toy. It was more than a toy for me. It was a gift and expression from my father, and it had a lot of impact and significance in my life as a young person. And so I just remember very actively searching and hungering for more information about what this was. And anytime I saw other items that looked similar to it, there was like this automatic like connection in my head. And I just kind of remember as a kid just like seeing all this stuff and just kind of cataloging and being really engrossed by weapons, and by not just weapons, but just the stories of heroes and the deeds of warriors. And that was my fuel, that was my fire when I was young. I also felt like, and this is more like on a subconscious level, like I always kind of felt that I enjoyed, reading and ingesting these stories, but I always felt kind of on the outside of the stories because of, what I look like. I was primarily reading and experiencing the history of, ancient and medieval Europe and medieval, Asia. So, I never really felt like I fit into that picture. So it's kind of like started this dual quest for me. So 6, I was just running around as a kid, swashbuckling and going crazy. At 9, I actually enrolled in my very first formal martial arts class. Again, I'm an old man. And back when I was a kid, 9 years old in the 80s, how we defined martial arts was limited really to just East Asia, if you think about it. Like, things like Thai boxing and stuff hadn't really gained the type of ground that it has today. So like when we're talking martial arts, you're talking karate, kung fu, judo, jiu-jitsu, aikido. Those were all considered exotic to me. Like judo, jiu-jitsu, aikido was exotic. Kung fu was exotic. It was, karate was found, taekwondo was around, but so I enrolled in a Okinawan karate class and started training there. But I liked it. I liked the training, sort of. But then some parts of it, I was a kid, and I was like, I wanted to be wild and free, and that was very, very different. But I did have the opportunity to study Okinawan karate in Okinawa, which was very, very beneficial for me. So I started at 9, and then I stepped away from it and did my own thing for several years. Hang on.
No problem.
That's someone knocking on my door. But I'm on a podcast right now. What you got? What you need? You got something to get? Drop it off. Of course. Of course. All right, you got to keep that in there.
Okay. Sure.
That was my business partner and training partner. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. He's all right. He'll be okay.
Okay.
So yeah. So my father was in the military, so he stationed in Okinawa. I went there. He went first, actually, and then we came a little later. And from there, I started to formally train. Started to continue my training in Shorin-ryu. And during that time, I told myself, I was a little older. It was like 13, 14. I was like, look, I want to invest a little more focus and energy into this, because when I was younger, I just wanted to kick, punch, and flip and fight. And now I'm a little older. I want to, focus on my kata and, kind of really try to, take this all in. So, I went into it with that kind of mindset, and I was, training and, progressing and, having a good time doing this. And at the same time, I came across the writings of Miyamoto Musashi. I stumbled upon his book by accident. I was looking for books on Lord of the Rings. I came across Book of the Five Rings, and that really blew my mind reading that. Sorry, he's dropping metal off at the house. I can hear it clanging.
Okay.
He's being passive aggressive right now. Hold on one second.
That's cool. It's fine. Sweet.
Yeah, this is something we just got water jetted out. Yeah. Anyhow, don't mind him.
Be right back.
Say hello if you want. You can say hello if he wants to.
Oh, hello. How are you?
Hi.
Hi. I didn't know if I was supposed to act invisible.
No, clearly not. We broke the fourth wall already with your demand knock on the door. So like the writings of Miyamoto Musashi really struck me in that I started to see that martial arts was like about fighting, but it was also about there was this higher level of refinement within the person, within the individual, and the connection between the fighting arts and the more the arts of writing poetry and of calligraphy, and of like bringing all these skills together into like one into one thing. And so I started to say, okay, wow, martial arts as a means of like of self-expression and refinement. And so again, while I'm in Okinawa, I come across the writings of Bruce Lee in the Tao Jeet Kune Do. Hold on. Let me see what happened.
That's my design.
Okay, here we go. You guys are the first ones to see. This will be our Takoba training sword coming out soon. Not bad.
Looks good. Looks good.
Looks good. Yeah. There we
What-
go.
I'll ask you about it later if you like.
Yeah.
And you can
Yeah. Provided we get past this segment. All right. That's all you got?
Yeah, I left the steel that they cut that Clubber Lane thing out of outside.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We love you.
Have a good day.
All right. So then Bruce Lee's writings work actually took that same principle, but it took it to another level for me, because not only were we talking about the individual expressing itself through martial arts, well, as a means of refinement, I also started to see martial arts as a form of personal expression, as well as I started to see it as not just something that was confined within East Asia, but there were multiple art forms practiced in other cultures, other Asian cultures, and in other, in Europe. So then it's like, that was my first time where it's like, okay, well, we're thinking about martial arts, so larger umbrella of martial arts and combat sports and things of related nature. So I started, it was like boxing, fencing, wrestling became part of this, this martial arts family tree, as well as some other more exotic arts from South and Southeast Asia. So needless to say, I started training in Jeet Kune Do after reading Bruce Lee's work, and started really to invest in this idea of, learning from multiple sources, and then, drawing what works best for me. And through Jeet Kune Do, especially through like the Jeet Kune Do concepts, which is headed by Diana Santo, there was a lot of Filipino, a lot of Southeast Asian, Silat, Filipino arts, Muay Thai, part of the Jeet Kune Do curriculum. And having experienced those arts, even just the learning about them, I started to see fighting arts that were even more like they were fighting arts, but they also combine aspects of ritual and culture, music, dance, a lot of other, things that you don't really find in like doing karate or doing something else. So I was like, wow, I was like, I'm really digging this idea of not only martial arts as a form of, bettering the person, or martial arts as a means of self-expression, but also martial arts as a way to connect with culture and to express culture. All this stuff is evolving. I'm evolving like this as a martial artist, but just as a black man of African descent in America, I'm going through a different type of evolution, where I'm starting from as a young person, starting from the very bottom rungs of, at the very depths of self-hate, which is something that plagues a lot of us, even though we may not realize it, but there's a lot of self-hate that we feel being of African descent. I know to speak honestly, I felt a lot of self-hate about where I came from. I felt a lot of things about slavery, about, the continent of Africa itself. Like, again, I say I'm an old man because it's really interesting how fast this stuff changes. But, when I was a teenager and before, like, you would be hard pressed to find history books in schools that actually dealt with the history of Africa. It was all just kind of glossed under like the dark continent. There's no written history. And then boom, we have slavery. And so, that was an upward fight, clawing and pulling myself to get to a point where I was loving myself. Just to be honest. So, and that took several steps. Like one step on that path was in my World Regions book. It happened to be I saw the first picture of a Tuareg warrior, and you know, it was the first time I had seen a man with brown skin, you know, with a sword. Like I was like, oh wow, it's like this is so there's something to this, you know what I'm saying? And then, you know, years and years later, my I said world regions of social studies for elementary, but world regions for middle school. My world regions teacher, she pretty much taught us about African history without using the book. Like she went off record, and this was the first time I heard about the kingdoms of Ghana, Mali, Songhai, um, Egypt, Kush, all these things. These are the first times I heard of this stuff. And so that kind of ignited, even though it was like a really slow germinating seed, it planted a seed within me that later on, when I got really, really into it, I went to and used those names and those terms that I heard from her class to kind of to help guide me. When I was 16, 17, the movie Only the Strong came out. And it was most people, if you were not from my time period, you probably didn't see it, but it was the first Hollywood blockbuster.
Guilty, sorry.
Said you're guilty. You seen it?
No, guilty. You haven't seen it. I'm sorry.
Okay, watch it. If you want some like '90s cheese, that's it for you. But
Okay.
Only the Strong was the first movie, the blockbuster, I guess, to feature capoeira in it. And so when I saw capoeira for the first time, I was like really, really mesmerized by the movement. And the movie doesn't really talk to you about the history of the art, but you can see from the practitioners, which says a lot about representation, but you can see from the practitioners that there was like a connection to Africa and to the struggles here in the diaspora. So I started to pursue capoeira quite fervently as much as I could, and this was like pre-internet days when the internet was like not what it is today. So there wasn't a lot of information. There weren't a lot of people who were teaching it, but you know, I come across some academic works on the art, and I began to practice and study it through that and through my memory of the movie. And you know, eventually, you know, communities here around me were forming, and I became, you know, started to, you know, visit those communities and started to grow my own group. And with capoeira, that's what really ignited the question. Is like, when it came to the origin, is like, well, if capoeira is this fighting art that's practiced by descendants of slaves in Brazil, or I should say enslaved Africans in Brazil, then the question, the political question is always, was this a uniquely Brazilian thing, or was this something that was a carryover from something older? And from my research and my understanding, capoeira is uniquely Brazilian in a sense. At the same time, the roots, the foundation, and the question of what does uniquely Brazilian mean when you have a country that has such an immense population of people of African descent, larger than many African nations itself. When we say Brazil in quotations, you know, we have to understand that a large cultural contribution to what Brazil is West and Central African. So that beggared the question for me, is like, if capoeira was based off of older traditions, then what are those traditions? And so that sent me looking for African martial arts on the continent.
Great. So that sent you down the rabbit hole pretty much.
Yeah, most definitely.
Great. That's a great story. It's a great story, and it's great to hear how martial arts informed and guided your experience. I think it's a very positive tale, and and it's so true as well what you're saying about African history as well. We don't have time. I don't think we have time in this video to go into that. But for viewers out there at the second watching, it's just not that. It's not in bookstores. It's not. You have to search for it still to find it. You can find it now. that's a positive thing. But you do have to actually search for it. You know,
Yeah.
like you were saying, the history of places like the Nubian kingdoms and the West African kingdoms. I mean, and everywhere down, there's like
Yeah.
there's a whole section of African history that doesn't get any attention, and for that and it's a really fascinating part of history, which should be, you know, more popular, I think.
Yeah.
But that's maybe for another video, where we, because we're never going to, you know, get to talk about the martial arts if we go into, you know, history and histories of various places. But hopefully we'll get a bit of a bit of those histories as we go on.